If we reach 50,000 subscribers until the end of 2026, I'm going to post full-on Necro-Chan smut on main. I'm gonna show her doing while with, and you bet you can see her. And I'm gonna post it on Twitter, I'm gonna post it on Blue Sky, and I'm gonna post it on Patreon. I was just informed posting it on Patreon could be an issue because my account already was flagged for being 18 plus for some reason, and then I can't upload videos on there anymore, which would very much be an issue for the people paying to see videos early. And the only way you can make this happen is by helping me achieve this goal.
All for a happy 2026 and more Necromancy games.
I had a rough past. I lost my ability to trust other humans and sheltered myself together with my minion creations as my only companions. But ever since I found you, there's something about you that just makes me want to be near you, get to know you. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I would also love to get to know you better.
Really? That makes me so glad.
But there's a thing we need to do first before we can get to know each other better. In this definitely two-sided and good for my mental sanity relationship.
Well, okay. Anything.
Great!
Where did you get that microphone
Who's ready
from?
for more Necromancy games?
What the?
She agreed to review more Necromancy games with me. Guys, more Necromancy video games. It's been way too long again. There's too many games for too little time, so I hope you're ready.
What?
Because it's time for more peak
Excuse
gaming
me?
with the best gameplay style. Whew, yeah, we are instantly starting with a banger today. Be My Horde is what happens if right-click to Necromance would have been developed further after its game jam, because it's basically that, with a progression system. And our hot Necromancer waifu that says demeaning things to you when you talk to her. This is already a masterpiece. If you see me talking about right-click to Necromance, you basically already know how this game works. You press the assigned button to reanimate corpses, run around on the field, and let your minions auto-attack enemies to then resurrect them, and you continue that until the continuously stronger and more aggressive getting enemies overpower you. With the biggest difference in game being that the Necromancer is actually partaking on the battlefield instead of just being an omnipotent being. This also means your run doesn't just simply end if you run out of minions. If you play well enough, you can actually try and resurrect stray corpses and make a comeback, even if that most of the time doesn't work, at least in the beginning. The run only ends if your Necromancer gets hit too much, where she first loses clothing. After that her skin, and then she dies. The game also has a progression system where you can upgrade basically everything about your character. From the amount of units being summoned on click, the summoning time, your health, speed, and even a bunch of skills you can select to create different builds. And some of these effects can be complete game changers, like making sheep spawn on the map that once turned explode on kill, basically taking out everything in the vicinity with them. Or the ability to automatically summon minions itself, which, with combination with a maxed out summoning speed, can just completely break the game. You can definitely feel that the game is still in early access. It doesn't really take long for you to have upgraded everything that currently is here to maximum, and after that point you can just try and beat your personal time record. Personally, I got to the point where the mages spawn that throw out fireballs that just annihilate your entire army in seconds. I get a few of them to join my army, but after the 4th or 5th one, it's basically over. I'm definitely excited to see how Be My Horde develops in the future. I'm definitely gonna continue making a few runs from time to time. Hello. Editing blur here. I fired up the game again after quite some time after recording this entire segment because I wanted to capture a little bit of the music for the background, and I may have noticed that they changed quite a few systems. Like, they changed the model of the Necromancer. She looks a lot nicer with better animations. She also can now wear different costumes. But I have noticed that they changed the entire skill system to the way that you cannot even like equip certain perks anymore, and instead have a pretty standard leveling system that is normal for these types of survivor games. I don't know if I prefer it or not. Your runs can definitely get a lot stronger now, also because you can just simply get way more than before. With you now, instead of being limited to just a few, you have to pick out of a bigger group. You're now basically just getting stronger and stronger every few seconds to minutes. So that's pretty cool. It also basically made this entire segment of me talking about the skill system completely outdated and worthless, but that's what happens when it takes you multiple months to make a single video. But hey, at least I would say that speaks for the developers. They are definitely very actively and quickly working on the game and making it better, so... Where did I rank my right click to Necromance? I think it's just fair to put this one on the tier above. Yeah. Minecraft is such a classic, isn't it? I don't really think I have to introduce this game to anyone here, right? At least I hope not. So it also shouldn't surprise anyone that there are a bunch of necromancy themed mods for the game. And the beautiful member of the community, Lanternlight, hello, actually made a server for us on the public Discord, entirely themed around the concept. And it definitely was a really interesting experience. First of all, you were able to choose from a list of races that all have their own unique quirks around them, with me obviously having picked the one that allows you to summon undead, the Revenant. We just decided to nerf this race pretty early on because the class had no summon limit, and the resource it needed to summon was also bugged, meaning you could just spam the key to summon infinite zombies, which was hilarious, but obviously not really intended, so that was sadly changed pretty quickly. Other than that, the game is basically just Minecraft, but with a few extra character skills. Well, okay, next to the new blocks, the new crafting stations, the weapons from Bloodborne, a bunch of new enemies, bosses, portals that teleport you into pocket dimensions that have little puzzles that throw you into a hellish limbo filled with nothing but terrifying music, black floating islands and eyes that watch you if you fail the puzzles. And obviously the god entity on the server that you were able to talk to and bargain with. But other than those things, everything was pretty standard. I know I just listed a bunch of things, even though, as said, it's just standard Minecraft as a joke. But I'm being pretty honest here. You still have your very normal Minecraft experience with mining, crafting and building, just with a little bit extra flair and new challenges. Which definitely was really nice. But I don't think anyone is going to be blown away by Minecraft with Necromancy. Which doesn't mean that the mods weren't impressive. I never really dabbled with Minecraft mods before this, to be totally honest. But I knew how crazy they can actually get. I already talked about the pocket dimensions that made me almost shit my pants live on camera. But the fact you can fight a massive undead creature that just summons continuous waves of ghouls that chase you was just cool. Even though it literally rained down so many of these mobs that my game just crashed. But hey, it was still cool. What definitely blew me away though was what you guys built on the server. I'm not really creative in these games and basically settle with like a small shack on an island, while some of you decided to build ridiculous underground structures that just made my jaw drop. That was probably what I enjoyed most with this. Yeah, being able to have more complex combat with more interesting enemies was nice, but I still just love seeing what people can create in this game. And that's why Minecraft mods are gonna get an A rank from me. You never can go wrong with Minecraft in general, and mods for my favorite class just made it even better. Sadly, Lantern had to shut down the server for personal reasons a while ago. But don't be sad if you missed your chance to be able to be a part of it, because I have set up something different for you. A V-Rising server. The game has been in its 1.0 for a while now, and it also has an entire skill tree centered around necromancy. So I bought a public server for 1 year, and everyone that wants to join can do that by simply joining the Discord through the link in the description and going to the V-Rising channel for the address and password. I really hope I'm going to see you there so that you can be a part of this experience, and that I'm able to talk about the entire thing once the year expires. Necroking is one of these... It's super simple but also super addicting types of games. You are the name-giving Necroking and are summoned into the kingdom to dethrone the evil king and free the people of his tyranny. And how do you do that? By walking across the map and playing Yu-Gi-Oh! You use bones to walk around the map and can walk over graveyards to get units. And to get more bones, you have to raid villages, towers, towns, basically everything you come across. The combat for this is relatively simple, unless you're me. The battlefield is split into 4 sections, with an arrow moving across them to indicate which section is currently active. You are on the left and the enemies are on the right, with both parties trying to move across the field to reach the other side. If units from both sides meet in the same section, they start attacking each other, with a number above the head indicating the health and damage simultaneously, meaning the damage output also goes down the more damage they take. You can place your units on the board whenever you want, without anything like waiting for your turn to start. The only thing that has turns here is the battlefield itself. This doesn't mean you can just spam your units though. They all have some requirements you have to meet. There's an amount of mana they cost, which regenerates over time, souls, which basically works as a limiter on how many units you can have on the field at once, and the number of fields they can be placed in. And this is where the challenge comes from. Setting up a field that can withstand the enemy waves without any of them being able to get to you and hurt your Necroking. having attackers that can move up a bot quickly while also defending units in the back, and support units that strengthen the others. And this, like I've already said, gets really addicting real soon. You just get sucked into this loop of exploring the map, gathering resources, fusing together units to create stronger ones and raid villages. You can even unlock more units in a skill tree, and you get the experience points by finding bosses on the map. It also works slightly differently, because you don't have to just survive waves against bosses, you have to get to them, like they are trying to get to you, but this time with a turn limit, because once you run out of turns, nightmares spawn that most enemies cannot even attack. So you're basically dead when that happens. Beating a run even unlocks new biomes on the map, like spider nests, swarms, or even hell gates, all with new units for the enemies, and also for you as well, that open up even more build options. You are getting a massive amount of content in this game, and that's while it's just like $5 on Steam. Necroking is an easy S tier for me, simply by how addicted it made me while playing. So, I think now is the perfect time to introduce the new segment I have promised in the last video, where we revisit old games that were already covered, that finally had their actual releases after the demo or being in early access. And let's just directly start with a game that basically made me kickstart this new segment, Throne of Bone. And from the beginning, the full version already feels better thanks to it actually supporting my native screen resolution now, but that's luckily not the only thing that's improved over the demo. Luckily, scratch that, thankfully, because oh my god, I love this. They improved basically every issue I had with them originally. I hope they also updated the demo after this, because phew, it is not a good representation of how the game actually is now. And to start off with one of my biggest worries originally, that thankfully didn't out to be true, there's a really steep complexity curve that happens directly after the point where the demo ended. With your cards getting more complex, enemy strategies requiring more of you, and your build becoming genuinely ridiculous. And that is a genuinely. The only run that I played that I did not win was my very first one, but that could maybe also have been for another reason. More on that later though. The game in general just really starts after you reach the third area, which luckily doesn't really take that long once you understood how the game works and which cards work best with your playstyle. Even the Minotaur isn't a problem anymore after that, and almost nothing can stop you once you reach that point. Leveling up, getting spells that synergize well with your build, and just seeing it all unfold with your units activating their abilities and attacking everything. Overall, I'm just happy that I like the actual game so much more than the demo. The art is still amazing, and even the in-progress cards that still have unfinished artwork still look really fun and creative with the designs. The card variety in general is so cool, with so many fun and creative cards that offer so many different strategies for your builds, with you just unlocking even cooler ones in your run by leveling up. But it's not all positive. There is one massive thing I still feel pretty unsure about, and that's the character abilities. The demo already had 2 different characters you could play, and the full game now has a total of 6. All of them starting with a different card and having a special ability only they can use. For example, the Bone Collector you start the game with gives you an extra currency every time you merge 2 cards. The Soul Sorceress triggers her first equipped spell 2 times, and the Dread Knight can turn his monsters into knights. All very basic effects, but then there's the Flesh Smith. And she can merge 2 different monsters that already were fused once before, combining the races, classes, effects, and stats. And yes, that's exactly as broken as you fucking think it is. There are a lot of monsters that activate pretty strong effects if related cards do something. Related in this case meaning that another monster has the same race or class. So having monsters that have multiple races and classes is already ridiculous and can result in things like this, where I've used a card that gets a permanent damage buff every time a pumpkin creature I own takes damage, with a card that gets a health buff for the current match for every monster in general that I own and takes damage. And combined with a Godfather that just fills my entire field with fucking pumpkin cards when he dies, it didn't take long to get numbers as high as this. It is ridiculous and amazing. The problem is that it is by far the most overpowered ability, at least compared to the other ones I have unlocked yet. Who knows, maybe the last 2 characters also have broken abilities, but at least the other 3 feel completely underpowered in comparison. Which doesn't mean they can't have cool builds themselves. The Dread Knight turning all of your creatures into the same class can obviously be amazing for relation abilities, and being able to cast the same spell twice in a single turn can be broken as all hell, but still. The runs are significantly easier with a Flesh Smith compared to everyone else. So either she has to be nerfed, which would be like the less preferable option, or the others need stronger abilities. Like, come on, getting 1 currency per fusion is so worthless at a certain point where you are making enough money anyways. But overall, this is still a way more amazing experience than I had the last time, and I can't wait for the full version so that I can feature it again. I think the game really deserves an up rank for that. Here, I am so proud of you. Oh, this is a good one. I talked about Death Must Die also, while it only was a demo. And man, have things changed since last time I checked it out. There's a bunch more classes now, and they all also play somewhat differently with slightly different stats and attack patterns. And that's not the best part. They added skill trees. And they are actually also really fucking good. They completely change the playstyles of the characters. And because I like you so much, I played through the entire current state of the game until the end of Act 2 and leveled up the mage to max level to show off what she can do. Because she is the one that has the summoning specializations. You get skill points by killing bosses in the different acts and different stages, and it doesn't even matter if you have killed the boss before, they give you one every time. It's a pretty simple skill tree overall, and if you mainly level up the left row, you get a few fun extras, like being able to have more summoning skills simultaneously. 3 flame summons you start a run with, and a massive fire-breathing dragon that you also can have from the start of a run. And yeah, this definitely all is more summoning themed. The necromancy ability in general itself is just the summoning skill you can get from the death god in the game. It's still just so much fun though. Thanks to my skill tree, my summons deal massively increased damage while I am not attacking myself, but my attack also gets stronger and bigger if I haven't attacked in a while. And thanks to my gear, that gives me an increase in level up rerolls, I can basically cheese myself to having the necromancy ability every run. Combined with crows that curse enemies, swords made out of blood, ice wolves, and even more fire spirits, which combined basically just trivialize the stages. Currently, there isn't really that much you can do after beating the 2 acts, but you can play the stages again with certain modifiers to make them more difficult while giving better rewards to optimize your gear, which definitely is giving people that care about that more to do. Overall, if you're willing to ignore that your summons aren't going to be only necromancy themed, I can just recommend the game even more than I already did. Hell yeah, Nevermore released, and I love it even more than I already did. It's still one of the coolest and most promising necromancy roguelites for the foreseeable future. It's still so much fun to run around the maps, killing enemies, dying, leveling up, getting new spells, and more summoning slots, starting a new run, repeat. They even now has a skill tree that lets you make your offensive and supportive skills even better. They also added a map screen that shows you the different routes of a level to let you strategize more by knowing what path you are going down and what kind of reward you are going to get by clearing a room. They also added a few new room types, like the one where you stand before a projection of yourself that can give you a pretty good boon, but also giving you a bane in return. The enemy density also feels a lot higher than before. It definitely happened more than once in later rooms that it got kind of hard to tell what even is going on, due to just how much is happening simultaneously with all the attacks, effects, and everything just jumping around. Thankfully, the performance is way better than before though. I still wake up from cold sweat with the nightmares I am still having of the performance of the demo. I do really still love this game. If I had to criticize something, it's that the leveling feels a bit slower than before, and therefore the game can feel kinda boring in the beginning until you actually start to unlock at least your second major summoning slot. And then there's also that there's only 2 minor minions, the melee ones and the ranged ones, where there's a huge variety of major ones. But those things definitely can be changed until the full release, and I cannot wait to talk about it again once the 1.0 releases. Ha. The Unliving. Are your minions still dumb as a rock? Yeah. Here's a gold star. Never change. The game actually improved quite a lot ever since I talked about it last time. It also changed pretty dramatically in some aspects, which makes me pretty happy. They definitely took the best kind of advantage out of being a game that used early access. It would also be kinda bad if the game didn't fix some of its major issues, which I definitely would say they did. First of all, I can't really put my finger on it, but I am pretty sure they did something about the visibility. It just feels a lot better and it's easier to keep track of everything. That's because they actually tweaked the visibility of everything, or if they just did something with the enemy and minion AI, I don't know. There definitely have been changes though. The enemies attack you less often directly and your little army feels a tiny bit less brain dead, but just a tiny bit. A big part of the charm comes from how stupid they are. Your abilities also feel a lot nicer than before. They feel a lot more centered around you actually summoning more. Like getting a few temporary blood skeletons, or how about a massive flesh saw that just melts through enemies' health. The spells definitely feel a lot more useful now. The currency also feels easier to obtain, meaning it's easier to get health back, which could get pretty frustrating earlier due to health restoration being super fucking rare to find outside of shops. The upgrade system for your main attack was changed to now simply require you to kill a certain amount of enemies with a certain weapon to unlock new things in the tree. And speaking of the hub, next to it still offering a ridiculous amount of unlockable skills and abilities for future runs, also has the Binding Crucible now, which allows you to flat out give yourself and your minions percentage-based buffs to stats. And I'm not talking about, ooh, 2% more damage if you farted on a Sunday while the sun was down. No, we're talking about the real man man shit. How about straight up doubling your fighter minion's health? 30% more mana? Or your own damage being increased by 100%? All of this also stacks up, which can really make the future runs a lot more manageable. There's also the Ascension Throne now, which I am unsure if it's new or not, but I didn't mention it when I talked about the game for the first time, so I just wanted to mention it here. And it can be probably best described as basically being the mirror from Hades 1. Although the game definitely isn't perfect and still has its issues, with certain things not really working properly at the most inconvenient times, I definitely think it's worth the price it is asking for. Don't know if they're still gonna add new major things or if the game is still being developed on. According to the Steam reviews, we basically finished up what was already there and then basically just abandoned it once the 1.0 hit. But I definitely got my money's worth, so I'm not gonna complain too much. And that's it for the games I wanted to talk about for a second time for this video. This is probably not gonna become a staple section in every Necromancy video from now on. Rather, it's just gonna be something I do every time I feel like enough games I have covered had their full release by now. I definitely would also appreciate if you guys would keep me up to date in the comments on games I have already covered that had some major updates. But okay, it's time for some new games, finally. This game is very interesting to me. This was actually one of the most requested games from the last few videos. People really wanted me to play this one, and it definitely intrigued me because on the one hand it's like one of the simplest and honestly also ugliest RPGs I have ever played. It looks like a badly made RPG Maker game with no animations, but on the other hand, God, I wish I would have known about this game so much earlier. Tales of Maj'Eyal is probably one of the coolest dungeon crawler games I have played in a while. It probably reminded me the most of something like the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, if I had to compare it to something, meaning everything's turn-based and it moves across the map simultaneously with you. Same goes for combat, with enemies in attack range only attacking if you also do something in their vicinity. But everything allows for a lot more depth than in Mystery Dungeon games. For one, you have a more traditional gear system with armor and weapons. You also have a simple skill tree that allows you to put 3 points per level into your character attributes, a point into your class skills, and a point into your race skills. It definitely isn't the deepest system, but that doesn't mean it doesn't allow for a lot of customization. The skills are paired into small groups, allowing you to skill into later ones if you put at least 1 point into the prior one and having reached the required level. And the game definitely has a certain kind of flow to it. With you running through dungeons, completing quests, finding new gear with way too much text to actually comprehend them, thank God for the item comparison hotkey, leveling up, unlocking new skills and repeat. But now the question is, where is the Necromancy? You couldn't pick it in the class section. The Sorcerer class also doesn't have any Necromancy themed spells, only ones themed around golem summoning. So how do you get the... Oh no. This game isn't just a one-and-done RPG, it actually also has roguelite mechanics with permadeath, with it being able to unlock new classes and races by playing the game and exploring the world. So what exactly is the requirement for the Necromancer? You have to find 4 lore tomes, titled How to Become a Necromancer. After you have done that, you have to visit the graveyard, kill the Necromancer that resides there, and voila! Necromancer unlocked. Here comes the problem. Everything in the game is RNG. That doesn't only include dungeon layouts and stuff, but it also includes locations of lore tomes, and yeah, no, I'm already way too slow on making these videos, and I'd like to release at least a few of them a year, if you don't mind. I've even read something about some guy taking like 800 hours to find all of the tomes, so sorry, but we sadly have to skip this one. Unless you are such a cool and awesome hacker man as I am and know how to go into the game files to alter them.
I went on a Reddit thread which showed a link to a website with a mod that instantly unlocks all the classes and races in the game.
And now we can actually play as the class. Thanks to this, I also found out there is a skeleton race you can play as, showing off another really cool thing about the game. Every race has their completely unique upbringing. With the elves, you are split into the more magical-oriented ones, the Shaelor, and the more physical-oriented ones, the Thaelor. For example, choosing a Shaelor starts you out in a cave, and the mission to find a camp of rogue elves that have to be eliminated before they can spread chaos, due to the Shaelor already being seen in a bad light, thanks to them being blamed for a massive calamity in the lore. And the skeleton race having their beginning be around being a failed summon by a necromancer that retained its will and therefore killed its creator to In my case, create an even better Necromancy Imperium. Or the stories differ after that point? I don't know. My Maj'Eyal character died to a way too strong enemy that I found behind a closed door inside of a rogue hideout. Man, I'd love the ability to read. And yeah, you have a few extra tries, but after that, it's over. New character it is. You thankfully can also customize your playthrough in difficulty, and if you even want permadeath, the game is recommending for it to be turned on, but I already established I can't read, so it's off for this beautiful fella over here. And the necromancy experience in this game is really fun. I definitely understand why it's an unlockable class with how much easier some things feel. The game definitely becomes a lot less scary in the beginning if you aren't just running around alone, but with a big army of spoopy boys that just continues to grow with your level. I definitely wouldn't have minded a bigger selection of summons to choose from, but that doesn't mean what's there isn't cool. You obviously have the classics like Call of the Crypt, the skeleton summoning spell, Shattered Remains that makes your skellies explode on death, Assemble which fuses some of your minions into a stronger one, and Lord of Skulls which buffs one of your skeletons into a way stronger version with more abilities and health. But the ones that aren't just listening to this video in the background probably noticed that that's just the first category in this. There's also the Master of Flesh section where you can get zombies and ghoul skills that work completely differently. Like the first one, Call of the Mausoleum, being a passive skill that automatically summons a ghoul after enough turns have passed, with you being able to force activate the spell to summon multiple ones instantly around you on higher levels. And if you also want to partake a little bit more actively in the fighting, you don't have to worry as well. There's a plethora of fun spells you can throw at the enemies in this game. The passives are actually also really interesting. I was able to get a skill thanks to being a skeleton that just straight up increases my physical stats, and then there's Blurred Mortality, which now is a skill I wish would be in every Necromancy video game, with it lowering my maximum life, but I do not die until I reach minus 260% health, while also getting higher resistances while I'm in the negative. And there's even more skill sections you can unlock by playing the game. I also just love how the game works with its mana system. While I was playing as my Maj'Eyal, I was an alchemist as my class, and they didn't just require mana to cast their spells, I also needed gems that I turned into basically magic ammunition to use as a catalyst for my spells. And the same goes for the Necromancer, with them requiring souls to summon the undead, which luckily are way easier to gain than those gems as well, with you know, constantly releasing souls from their mortal shells. The game definitely offers quite a lot, and I now definitely understand why so many people wanted me to play this. Honestly, I wish the game would get a version for Switch or something in a slightly modernized form to make it more suitable for controllers, while also maybe simplifying a few of its UI elements to make them a bit more readable. Maybe this game is what finally is going to get me over the edge to buy a Steam Deck. I just know I would play this game like every 3 seconds and before bed while watching a movie or something. It really is the perfect dungeon crawler you can play on the side, while still requiring enough brainpower on the higher difficulty settings to not get boring. Like I'm literally playing this right now while writing the script, and that's why the game is going right into A tier. Really? Another Diablo clone IRPG? How many do you want to feature on this list? Yeah, you're kinda right. It definitely is just another Diablo-like ARPG. Even while being an actually really good one, you have to admit they all have their similarities in how they work, play, and especially with how the Necromancer class works. So how about we spice it up with something different? Mods. Grim Dawn has a really cool multi-class system where you can choose a second class after level 20 to mix with your first. And with all the DLC, you have access to the Necromancer, so you can make pretty funny creations with that alone. But how about we add a mod into the mix that gives you access to every class from Diablo 3, and actually even the Diablo Immortal exclusive class of Blood Knight, meaning you can multi-class your Necromancer with a Necromancer. Twice the necromancy, twice the fun, am I right? Yeah, it definitely spices it up thanks to you having access to way more minions than normally, with them also looking and working slightly differently. But to burst the bubble right from the start, you don't really have access to the Diablo 3 Necromancer, but more a class massively inspired by it. They had to drastically alter how some systems, summons, and spells work from Diablo 3 to make them function in Grim Dawn, which led to things like Corpse Explosion to not even be here, and instead you can get a passive skill that can activate an enemy kill that makes them explode, or something like that. Call me stupid if you want, but I could swear that some of these skills don't work as intended, or at least don't feel the way they are supposed to. I'm definitely also not the biggest fan of how the skill tree works in general. It basically is very similar to how the passive tree in Last Epoch works, but instead of unlocking later perks by having spent enough on earlier ones, you have to feed skill points into an entirely separate bar on the bottom that then allows you to spend points on the skills. I just don't like this approach as much, because it takes away from your points and makes it, in my opinion, unnecessarily take longer. Yeah, you get 3 points per level, but I'd much rather have just 1 per level, but every point actually goes towards actively improving and unlocking actives and passives. You definitely also can feel the game's age, and not in a sense that it's somehow aged poorly or something, far from it. Claiming something like games in general, something digital that isn't affected by the passage of time, can age is ridiculous in general. There's just certain elements in this game that most ARPGs aren't doing anymore. Like you not really having a quest marker that always shows you where you have to go. You have to basically listen to what the characters have to say, and if you forgot about it, read up about it in the quest menu. The quest marker basically only shows up once you are relatively close to your goal, which again isn't really a bad thing. I love this exact thing in a lot of games. I just personally don't really like it in an ARPG dungeon crawler, where I basically just want to run from one end of a level to the next while annihilating everything that enters my screen. But the game definitely is making it clear that it doesn't want to be played like that. With it probably also being one of the harder ARPGs I've played so far, with requiring a certain level of strategy to some encounters. Dear God, kill the healers, they are going to make your life miserable. The map itself is also really amazing, with it not being separated into chunks, but instead being one massive connected overworld that gets split up by caves and dungeons you can explore to maybe even unlock other paths in every area. With everything thankfully being very well connected by portals, which doesn't mean the system works flawlessly. There are points in this game where I die pretty frequently, which in itself isn't a problem, but it definitely can be because you get sent back to your last town on death. And depending on how far you have gotten since your last portal, this can mean minutes of walking through already cleared out areas just to, in worst case, instantly get one-shotted again and having to walk all the way again. And it's not like that happens frequently or anything, but when it does, it is really frustrating. Especially because the mod also introduced some bosses from Diablo 3, which I found out the hard way. By activating one of these pillars, which are really important because they give you skill points for another tree, where you can unlock vital specializations for your character. I just had to get past this asshole first. And I did. But you already know what I had to go through for that. But for the constellation map, just use a guide. There's a search function, but I didn't really find it useful enough that it's still easier to just Google which ones you should level for certain effects. The game is definitely really fun, and I get why it still, to this day, has such a loyal fan base, with it still getting supported all those years later, and also such a cool mod community. So I'm gonna give the game a B tier. It's 100% worth it, especially with how cheap you can get it now. If there's one thing I haven't expected for this year, then that The Legend of Zelda of all game franchises would get its first new top-down entry since Link Between Worlds from 2013, and that it would center around Zelda being the main playable character for the first time ever. And if that isn't crazy enough, Zelda has the ability to summon every enemy she has killed before. This game was made for me. It also released just a few days after my birthday, so I'm just going to take this as the Nintendo gods having blessed me and heard my prayers. They also used the map of Link to the Past again, while actually expanding heavily on it, and adding more of the different races that were introduced in later entries. This is in general also just such a cute game, man. And not only because the art style being all cutesy and like everything is made out of toys, but the story overall just has this wholesome vibe to it. Not the part about the voids opening up and devouring people whole and slowly eating up their life energy until they just vanish. No. The actual personal stories of the characters you meet in every area and the struggles are just nice. And that definitely also describes the game overall. It's nice. It's just nice to have a Zelda again with a more traditional and linear structure. It's just nice how they still managed to build in some of their newer elements that they introduced in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It is just nice how you are finally able to play as Zelda, and it's just nice how she has a completely different playstyle to Link. The summoning in general is super interesting. You have a little companion, Try, that gave you the ability to summon previously defeated enemies, with them all having their own unique use cases and different summoning costs, which are represented by the amount of triangles they require. At the beginning you have only 3, but you can level that number up, or even lower the cost of some of the monsters by closing the rifts around the map. Meaning you can decide if you want to walk around with one big bodyguard, or with your little army of nuisances that swarm at the enemies. Or you can just partake in the fun yourself and use your magic bar to use Link's sword. But they definitely designed that part to be more of an emergency solution. The game really wants you to experiment with your summons, be it using the monsters for fighting enemies or traversing terrain challenges, or just building staircases with beds. If this list were about the game's quality in general, the game would be an easy S tier. But when I am talking about the necromancy abilities, I would probably give it like a B. But hey, this is my list. I am biased. I literally use the thinnest definition of necromancy as an excuse to talk about Zelda here. Thank you for letting me indulge in it. Oh, hello. Nice to see you here again. I've just been decorating my room here a little bit. Yeah, I moved in with a necromancy girl ever since she asked me so... kindly? And look, there's my desk, my TV, and my bed. I know it's not much yet, but it's gonna be.
What are you doing?
Oh, me? I'm just decorating.
You sure? Because it looked like you were talking to your imaginary friend.
I'm not talking to my imaginary friend! The first game of today is not as interesting as I'd like it to be. We are playing as a local village boy who, through sheer chance, came into the possession of the name-giving necromantic dagger Unferat, an ancient artifact that allows us to conjure up our own spells to summon our undead army, which sadly also led to our father being killed and a bounty being put on our head because of it. This shouldn't be too much of a problem though, because we are able to find shelter in the ruins of the old lighthouse where apparently another necromancer resided a long time ago. From which point we have full access to the game's world and mechanics, which are definitely interesting. The dagger gives us the ability to conjure up spells from this funny circle thing, to combine the words and create spells that do all sorts of things, like turn us into a crow, summon rats, and obviously summon things like skeletons or zombies. But that would be too easy by itself. Obviously. To cast any of our spells, we also need materials, like a feather to turn into a crow, obviously a dead body to create a zombie, and remains that we can create by combining human flesh and bones in our cauldron for our skeletons. But the cauldron is broken, so we need to find some, let me try that again and, oh shit. Maybe it works for some rats? Not really. Okay, let's just sneak in the mine and get some ore. And by sneak, I mean awkwardly walk into it, collect a few pieces of ore, and then awkwardly walk away again, while the mine workers awkwardly follow you. Yes, this is the top speed. Why do you ask? Now we can create some remains and, necromantic summons can only exist at night. I guess I'm just gonna go and collect some things until nightfall. I'm getting chased again by some humans. Very slowly. Does nobody here know that running exists? Okay, it's finally night. What were the words again? Alright. Ha! It worked! Oh. You're only limited to 2 skeletons in the beginning. Well, I at least can fight back now, and I can get the zombie summon once I leveled up and hopefully increase my army size that way. Hooray! I'm actually able to successfully win a fight now. Very slowly. But I'm not dying anymore at least. Ah, it's daytime again. Okay, can I stop with this? I didn't enjoy my time with this game, not at all. The premise is interesting and the idea of having to combine different words to turn them into spells is a good one, on paper. But there are so many weird and outright bad game design decisions here that I just cannot have fun with this. You already saw how slow you walk in this game. It does get a little better with a crow form, but now you have even more sluggish controls and you cannot change your altitude manually. It's decided by the terrain you click on, because movement is decided entirely by mouse click, so you can't really fly over or up to things unless you're able to actually see the top of it. The magic system also doesn't really feel all that much thought through. On the one hand, you having to actually say the spells in the correct order is an interesting idea and makes you engage with the system by having to memorize the spells. On the other hand, it's relatively hard to sometimes make out the words in the heat of the moment, with them constantly rotating around and the game also not pausing or at least slowing down while you are in this menu. And if you're like me and lack object permanence, good luck trying to remember what the spell even was while you're being attacked. Going into your magic book to check your spells also doesn't pause the game, by the way. Your spells also require resources that you have to craft isn't helping here as well, especially with your summons also being so limited in number after all this. Not to mention them dying when the sun goes up and you're basically just having to wait and sit around doing absolutely nothing while you're waiting for it to be the time to not get instantly killed by everything again. This all just feels like too many restrictions to be actually fun to me, you know? It just doesn't really feel like this game was playtested to see if the ideas proposed here are actually working well together. I can actually talk about one other thing here. The spellbook itself. There's actually a pretty big number of spells in the game, some of them sounding really cool. Sadly, I wasn't able to see any of them because you need to level up and put skill points into the different ones to unlock them. You'd think the little counter in the UI with the kills might show you the XP, but this is actually for something else. It shows you your human kill count, because you progress the story and trigger new events by killing enough people in the world. Leveling up itself is done by killing specific humans or doing certain side quests. And I have to say, I like this. It's an interesting idea to tie your progression to how much you are decimating the local population in a necromancy game. Although I have to say, I would prefer a more classical level up system. There are some skill points you can get from certain kill count thresholds, but it isn't your main source. Everything combined leads to the game feeling like a slog in combat, exploration, and character progression. Like, did you know that there's a spell that if you level it up enough makes your minions immune against daylight? Yes, that's awesome. And I managed to level it up high enough right before the sun went up and my skeletons collapsed. Sorry, I can see what this game is trying to do, and I like some of what it is doing, but it's just too much of a slog for me to really enjoy what is going on here. I don't want to wait while doing nothing yet again, just to continue slowly walking through this and slowly killing the enemies while slowly progressing through the story. Give the game a chance for yourself if you found anything I showed here interesting. It's really cheap, and the dev really seems to care about this little project, so maybe you can find more enjoyment in it than I did. But for me, it's sadly a C tier. Oh, what do we have here? A roguelite where you play as a necromancer, creating minions to fight in one-on-one battles against pesky humans? Picking up their sorry remains after they inevitably lose to you and using them to create even stronger minions? Hell yeah! Corpse Keeper is an extremely simple game. You choose a level, walk through it, collecting any goodies you find on the way, and when you encounter an enemy, summon your undead to fight against them. And this feels so good. Damn, this is the best way to describe this. The graphics and art style are definitely more divisive, but damn, it feels so good to play this. The way the hits connect, how snappy but still weighty it feels, the sound of the parry and the effects when you win a fight. This is so great. And you know what? I played this directly after I got fed up with Unferat, and I think this little clip from the livestream speaks louder than my words ever could. I'm not really that fast. Time for teleportation magic. Bah! Bah! Come on, hit it. Hit the mouse. What? Get sliced! How do I... Is there a manual way to control how high? I will parry the shit out of you! I'm just slowly walking away from the people that slowly follow me, and they don't stop following me, I guess. Yeah! What you gonna do? Bap. Literally the only usable spell I have right now is fucking rats. I cannot even summon a skeleton or something because I need 50 fucking materials. Oh my god. And the rats apparently also did 0 damage. What the fuck is this? Marshall. Yeah, I like this a lot more. It's not perfect, but let's start with the good things at first. It should be obvious by now that I really enjoy the combat in this one. It's relatively simple. You have your dodge, your parry, light and strong attacks, methodical movement. We have to be wary of the timing. So it's basically Dark Souls PvP, but in 2.5D. I think that actually describes its vibe pretty well, with a way of how pumped up it makes you feel, the almost beautiful dance that goes on in combat, how you can stunlock them into oblivion with the right setup. Killing these enemies allows you to harvest their remains and take them with you to your base, together with everything else you find in the different areas, be that chests, artifacts or old tortured bodies that have crystals sticking out of them. And you're going to need as much as you can, because your minions slowly start rotting away when you take them with you. So you have to create stronger versions for future runs, with more buffs and abilities. Everything has its use. Burning enough skulls of the same type increases the amount of buffs that can be imbued with by creation. Their bones can be used to recreate their skeletons, their flesh to give them a form again, and their hearts, soul crystals, ashes or herbs, can be used to activate the buffs. So the game becomes a constant balancing act between looting areas and fighting, trying to slow down the rot as long as possible and creating new and better minions with everything you find in your missions. Oh, and you also don't want to get hit as much as possible, because they also don't automatically regen their health on return to the hub. You have to use even more flesh to heal them afterwards, or even make them rest for a few in-game days, because they can also break their bones if you're not careful enough. Speaking of days, you are on a timer. You don't have unlimited time for any of this. You have to be efficient, so that you are strong enough to fight against the bigger enemies and unlock the boss, which is quite hard, I might add. The difficulty spikes pretty early on, so you also have to be careful or your days are going to run out and all of your progress is lost. Luckily, the game is a roguelite, so you keep the ability levels you gain for the different unit types by burning their skulls. And also there's the blood altar, where you can use another resource you get by killing enemies, their blood, to increase the quantity of items you're gonna start your next run with. The game has a very clear focus and all the systems systems work very well together to offer you a clear goal and gameplay loop. I also really enjoy how it constantly drives you forward by giving you a time limit and not making your summons permanent, thereby forcing you to take risks and go to harder and higher leveled areas to get better materials. Your minions also don't gain any XP if a mission is underneath their level, preventing you from just farming easier missions. Here's the thing I don't really like though. I think it's a little bit too slow. The amount of summoning materials you get, the amount of blood for the altar, and even the time of how long a single run takes all feel too long for me personally. Getting just a single specific minion you want can take multiple days away from your already very limited day count. The higher difficulty areas are so hard sometimes that damage is almost inevitable, meaning you are almost always gonna be out of items you need to heal them or slow down the rot. And it's relatively easy to get to the point where a run feels completely lost and like you have to throw away your last days and start over. This does definitely feel intentional, with you being able to just continue pumping blood for the blood god and skulls for the skull throne to make future runs easier, but this also just feels a bit too slow. The upgrade in between each run just feels too insignificant and... What? What's this? A letter? From who? Oh... You know, the letter from Craig is right. Most of the problems I have with this game can be solved by me just getting good. I wouldn't have to worry about constantly having to waste resources or to heal up if I don't get hit in the first place. So while I'm going to do a few more runs and try to get better at this, let me just put this in A. This is, I think, the first time a mobile game is featured on the series, isn't it? And by that I mean a fully fledged game that exists solely for mobile devices and not a game that also has a mobile version. And how should I describe this one? Have you ever seen one of these fake game ads where someone is merging things together to create bigger things and get rewards? Well, someone apparently took that concept very seriously and made a game with exactly that, where you also are a necromancer. This game is as simple as you can get. You have your things you click on to generate stuff, you drag two of the same stuff together and create bigger stuff, and then you do that until you run out of mana and the game asks you to either wait an extended period for it to fill up again, pay the real money currency, or watch an ad.
Hey! Do you like the video series you are currently watching? Then consider joining the new Patreon! You get to watch videos early, get high-res versions of art I made for this channel, and you don't get to join the Doula army like the highest tier YouTube members get, because you get your very own! Charging together with Necro-Chan against the army of this very handsome fella over there. Which army is gonna get bigger? Which army is gonna get stronger?
Fucking unskippable ads. So yeah, this entire thing turns into a slog pretty soon after starting to play it, as it's another one of those games that makes waiting one of the major gameplay aspects that you can obviously skip by paying real money. But why do you even merge things and create stronger and bigger units? Because this cute fella over here is hungry and he wants to eat your minions. This Cthulhu wannabe basically is the progression in this game. Give him what he wants, fill up his hunger meter and get rewards in form of chests with a bunch of currencies you need to unlock more things to tap on and be able to merge more different and wacky creatures, and you continue doing that until you, I don't know, fall asleep. Do people actually enjoy merging games like that? Am I the weird one for finding this absolutely pointless and boring? The only thing that really kept me going here and continued merging the same things over and over, watching the same 3 fake game ads over and over again, was the genuinely great pixel art and being curious how the next stage of the creation is going to look like. What else is there even to say? Did I miss anything? All you do is merge things to merge more things. I don't really...
So, when are you gonna talk about it?
What are you doing here?
I never left.
So what do you mean by when I'm gonna talk about it?
You know exactly what I'm referring to.
No? How should I know what you're talking about? Unless... No, this can't be. That game is a myth!
Not anymore. It is here!
Necromerger is going in B tier, by the way. Oh my god, it's so good, you guys. The long wait is over. It is finally here and you can play it. If you buy the Founders Pack to get early access, I expected a lot. Path of Exile was one of the most ambitious ARPGs ever made, so the sequel had massive shoes to fill from the start. Especially with all the previews showing off the coolest looking shit imaginable and the game looking better every time, so... How was the game so far? It's pretty fucking good. It's actually crazy how different the game feels to the first one. PoE had a pretty arcadey feel to it, with everything feeling kind of snappy and quick, and enemies mainly just being blobs that run around on the map to be killed. But things were upgraded now. They aren't just enemy-shaped pixels on your screen anymore. This shit is real now. Your character has more of a weight to it. Same with the enemies. They all just feel more real now, if that makes sense. I can't really explain how, but all the enemies left more of an impression on me here than they ever did in the first game, or in any other RPG for that matter. If that's because the enemy density isn't all that high, and therefore they all have a little bit more health to deal with, or if it's because of their beautiful and detailed animations, I don't really know yet. What I can definitely say though, is that the pure movement alone feels already stellar, thanks to this added weightiness. And that's just the beginning. They changed the movement of the game in a lot of other ways as well, like by adding a dodge roll. And I'm so happy it's not like Diablo 4's one, where it has a cooldown and therefore can feel extremely clunky and almost useless in most fights without gear to compensate. But thankfully, the one in PoE 2 is unlimited and can be spammed like there's no tomorrow, and the game knows that. It is actually insane how much more active the combat feels here compared to the first game thanks to this. The enemies were designed around your abilities, so they now fight a lot more aggressive, throwing around more projectiles, more AoE attacks, simply more things you actively have to dodge because, well, you can now. Especially the boss fights profited the most from that, feeling like actual, genuine challenges you have to overcome. PoE always was one of the better RPGs when it comes to like bosses, but the leap in quality here is absolutely impressive. They're not just spectacles visually wise anymore, but also in what they do. Doesn't matter if it's one of the first bosses in the game, a big one, a small one, or one in the end. All of them have an insane move pool that requires you to think, act, and react to survive, especially because they also now don't keep their damage anymore on death. So we have to beat them in one try now. And I appreciate the challenge. Every boss so far was a unique and exciting experience, even if some could be considered a bit overtuned, and I definitely say that most of them have too much health compared to how quickly they can squish your Necromancer, but hey, that's what early access periods are here for, so I am sure this problem will be fixed in the near future. And the dungeons. Mwah! I don't want to shit even more in Diablo 4 than I already did in my last video, but this is an endgame dungeon in Diablo 4, and this is a normal dungeon in PoE 2. You almost can't compare them. It's insane. They also introduced WASD movement, and I never would have believed I'd say that, but I think this is the first ARPG where I prefer the movement like this, which probably comes from everything feeling more weighty. With the added level of control is very much appreciated while trying to dodge roll everything and still keeping your attacks on the enemies, but that was just the basic movement of the game. I have so much more to talk about, like the fact that the game looks this good. Like, oh my god, this game is probably the most beautiful top-down game I have ever played next to Diablo 4, and it doesn't stand under it in any way. Hell, I would go as far as to say it looks better in some areas, but PoE 2 just does so much more with it than just being pretty and actually being creative with its setting that Diablo wishes it would have. Every location you go to has its own and unique twist in an established setting that just keeps it fresh the entire way through. The sheer amount of different looking areas is just insane for an early access game that just features the first 3 acts with 4 more still to come. Currently we have the first act where you obviously start on a beach and then head through forest, fields, undead crypts and even thicker forests. The second act where you travel with a caravan that is pulled by slaves that are attached to it directly by piercings in their back. By the way, through a red desert, a black desert with bones in it, and a desert with pillars in it. Yeah, okay, this one is a bit more boring. But hey, it still looks really cool and unique. And the third act, where you march through swamps, jungles, lost civilizations, and time travel into the distant past to see people getting sliced open by sci-fi torture devices. So you're definitely not gonna get bored because of there not being enough variety. But that's enough about the visuals. How about we talk some more about the gameplay of PoE 2? And are you ready? I'm gonna rip it off, read carefully, so stay calm, everything's gonna be fine. Are you ready? Okay. Yeah, the skill tree's back and with a vengeance. Not gonna lie, I kinda respect them for not having bended the knee on reworking and simplifying the passive skill tree, the single biggest reason for new players of this series to quit the game after leveling up for the first time. But everyone who played the first one, you can let out a big sigh of relief because the 2 biggest changes they made to this system is, for one, that you can now choose if you want to increase dexterity, strength, or intelligence by going through a small node, and the way more important change, you can now respec your tree by spending a small amount of gold at this guy, instead of grinding for an absolutely stupid and rare item currency that's super annoying to efficiently farm. So you finally can actually play this game somewhat casually. Just putting your points into things that sound interesting to you while trying to get accustomed to everything, and then respecting when you realize that you could change some things for the better, or decided to follow a class guide because you are a normal human being that doesn't want to study the periodic table times 1,000. Thank God for the search bar to look for keywords, otherwise I would have never found anything in this thing. Speaking of skills, they work completely differently to before. Remember in the first game where you had to slot in your active abilities as gems into your weapons and gear that you then had to slot together with support gems to make them better, and being completely frustrated over RNGs is not giving you a gear piece with a combination of slots that you actually need to insert all of the gems you need, not to mention actually finding the gems you want? Well, say goodbye to that, because you don't slot them into your gear anymore. You slot them into an entirely different menu now, where you put the active skill gem in the big slot and then the support gems into the smaller ones next to it, being able to increase the number of support slots with an item you naturally find while playing the game. By doing this, they also remove the color of the different slots, allowing you to unfold the entire potential of your gems by removing all the annoying and frustrating RNG. They also completely changed how you collect gems in general. You don't find specific gems anymore, you just find uncut ones with different levels, allowing you to choose the specific active and support gem you want, with none of them even being class specific and allowing for ultimate freedom and experimentation, even giving you recommendations for what support gems you should slot into what active gem. The sheer amount of possibilities here is insane, and all of the changes implemented here invite you to experiment so much more than you ever could in the first game. And don't think that any of the changes implemented that I talked about so far made the game in any way less complex than the first one. They somehow managed to make every system simpler and easier to understand, while at the same time not doing that at all and still being a super newbie unfriendly game, especially with the game still being pathetically bad at explaining its systems to you. So I'm just really happy to have people in my community that actually know what the fuck they're doing in this game, that are playing together with me on the public Discord and helping me through every problem I face.
You don't socket stuff in your gear anymore, which does free up a bunch of gear pressure, makes it a bit easier to gear.
Okay. And you can believe me when I say there were a lot of problems I faced. This game is a lot at once. And I genuinely have to admit, I am unsure if I would have even beat the current state of the game without the help that I got from my personal human wiki page.
I can read the wiki by blinking. It's hidden in my eyelids now.
With that, we can probably talk about the Necromancer class of this game, the Witch. If you are planning to play this game for the Necromancy, wait for the full release, or play it with others, because the game in its current state is so ridiculously unbalanced that you are not going to get past Act 2 without being an experienced player, especially if you want to go summon a Necromancer. The minions are just too weak compared to what is thrown at you, especially in Act 2. Funnily enough, this gets a lot easier once you get past Act 2, with the scaling of your minions and the enemies getting a lot more balanced. And I would even go as far as to say that the minions are getting really powerful after Act 2, but that's the problem. You have to get past Act 2. It is objectively the hardest and longest act currently in the game, throwing enemies and bosses at you that are ridiculously tanky compared to anything that comes before and even after them. And the final boss of Act 2 was a point where I really considered to just stop playing. I was able to frustratingly bite myself through every obstacle thrown in my way, slowly killing boss after boss, very slowly. But I just could not beat the final boss. And the only reason I was able to do it was because I got help from someone way too overleveled for the area. And I'm happy that I got that help, because Act 3 is where the game gets really good and your build starts to really get going. And I would have missed that experience if I didn't get any help. But alright, the Necromancer. The skill gems for your class are under the occult section of the gem menu, with them revolving around bone-themed attacks, curses, and of course, summons. And they were changed pretty drastically from the first game. For example, zombies aren't permanent anymore, they are timed. And skeletons aren't timed anymore, they are now permanent. And respawn automatically after a few seconds, similar to the skeletons of Diablo 3. The number of skeletons being determined by your amount of spirit. Every minion gem has a specific amount of spirit they need for each unit, and you allocate specific amounts of spirit to the respective minion to increase their number. The spirit cost of each unit is lowered with increasing the gem's level, allowing you to get even more units for less spirit invested. There also are active skills that need you to reserve a specific amount of spirit to activate them as basically another passive, like for example the Raging Spirits, who aren't a summon spell anymore but get automatically summoned on using other fire spells. I like these changes here as well. Yeah, your army is a lot smaller compared to the first game, but it feels a lot more methodical than before because of it, with you having a specific resource dedicated to increasing the number of summons you have. Although I have to say, I kinda miss having a skill that just summons like a few dozen skeletons at once. The problem here is, like I've already mentioned earlier, that the class just feels way too weak for the entire second act and only starts to get better afterwards. And it really does turn into a fun class. How about we talk about a few things I did not like now? About things where I would even go as far as to say that I hate them. A big thing that I did not really like about the first game was the Ascension dungeon you had to do to get skill points for your Ascension class. Something pretty important. And it was just a really long and annoying dungeon that you had to go through multiple times, with it just getting longer and more annoying each time. And that system returns here in Act 2 of Path of Exile 2 as well. Just even more shit. It's trying to go down a more roguelite route, I think. Fading completely at it. You get to choose a room with different challenges to complete, like killing specific strong enemies, dodging traps, surviving, and so on. Some rooms also give you some buffs or some debuffs. Pretty basic stuff. But here comes the kicker. You have a second health bar here that you cannot refill with your potions. The only way you can refill this second health bar is sometimes as a reward for completing a room. And if it depletes to 0, you have to start the entire thing over from the beginning. And it's the most unbalanced and unfun thing currently in this game. This dungeon is such a boring slog where you just do the same few brain-dead challenges one after another, getting rewarded with a devastating debuff that makes you significantly weaker, and then throwing a boss at you that feels like he doesn't account for you not being able to heal. Spamming a fuck ton of AoE attacks that don't seem to even despawn, filling up the entire area until you just die. Hell, the only reason I beat the dungeon was after a few runs I got a buff that made me insanely OP in here and basically made me rush through it. And I know that this game relies a lot on RNG systems, but this is just too much. Making my success in this dungeon and therefore my ability to ascend my fucking class this reliant on me getting a good run is just frustrating beyond belief. If I want a game where my success is highly dependent on the upgrades I find during a run, I just play an actual roguelike. Sadly, I don't even like the Ascension classes that much currently. There isn't really one that is focused on minions yet, so I just went with the one that gives you a permanent burning dog summon. There's also another Ascension dungeon in Act 3 that you also have to do for more of the Ascension skill points. And it's basically the same thing, but instead of sometimes giving you maybe buffs or debuffs, it always gives you a new annoying effect that constantly attacks you while trying to kill the waves of enemies. At least you don't have a fucking second health bar here. It's just still so annoying though. You also have to go through all 3 current acts 2 times. Once on normal and then hard before unlocking endgame, which as far as I have understood, they did so that you are the correct level that you are actually supposed to be in the endgame. It's just kind of boring having to do everything again, just slightly stronger before you can actually progress further. But after you've done all that, you can finally get to the real meat of the game. The campaign basically just being a prolonged tutorial in the eyes of the community. And how is the current endgame? This is probably the point where I should mention that I did beat the original game, but never got into the endgame and the map system, because it suddenly requires me to throw away my entire build and optimize the shit out of everything to even have a chance here. And is that any different of a sequel? No, it isn't. It's the exact same thing, with the difficulty suddenly spiking and everything being super hard, with you basically having to throw any experimentation and weird combination of skills out of the window and optimize. And I just don't like that. I'd go as far as to say that I hate that. I'm the type of player that is always taking the most fun route over the most optimal one in his games. So the game basically just going, what? You find this combinations of skills more fun? Then fuck you and die, is just super frustrating to me. Not to mention that they made the absolutely stupid decision to remove you having multiple tries on a map. You still get all 6 portals similar to how it was in the first game, but once you accidentally die to something you barely saw rushing towards you, it's game over and start again with a new one. With the game obviously not mentioning that change and confusing the shit out of me. And here is the thing. I actually did optimize my build this time. I asked my friend Charlotte, my personal living wiki again, to help me optimize. And wanna know a funny thing? We changed a few active and passive skills around to have everything synergize better with each other, and also basically changed every support gem I had slotted in, because the funny thing actually is none of the recommended support gems for each skill are actually the ones that you really wanna use. So good luck to anyone who doesn't have a translator for the eldritch being they call the sheer amount of text they expect you to read and memorize to get anywhere in this game. The fuck did it just say?
Basically, he was saying that, for some reason, putting multiple projectiles onto Bone Storm makes it cast significantly faster, because instead of adding 2 extra projectiles to the overall Bone Storm total, it adds 2 every single second you're channeling.
Ah, thank you. And the exact thing I said would happen has happened. Yeah, my build is better. I can get through the maps now with relative ease, but I don't have the skills I enjoyed the most anymore. Because the skills and combinations I wanted to use are simply not as strong as this, which is the reason why the entire endgame has lost me before it even started. I stopped caring and playing the game after having done just 7 maps of endgame. And I don't think I will return before the full version releases. Which is just sad in my opinion, because the endgame looks so interesting. And the sheer amount of customization is just insane. But what use do I get out of this customization if I am not allowed to actually enjoy the game with a setup that I personally enjoy the most? And being forced to just use something everyone else uses because it's simply the best and sometimes only thing that can clear certain content. Also, the endgame maps that I have done all felt like they completely flush down the level design and just throw you into open areas with a bunch of random enemies in them. The game in general has some absolutely massive and open areas, but most of them have good design with walls and stuff. These are just big, with nothing in them besides enemies. Not even a boss in the end with most of them. So I sometimes didn't even know I beat a map. I really want to put this game into A tier because I did enjoy my time a lot, but the end definitely did kill my fun for the game too much for that. So at least for now, it's B tier. Remember this one? Yeah, the full version of Monsters Domain released. Is it any better than the prologue demo we looked at a while ago? What do you think? The beginning of the game is almost the exact same as in the prologue demo, which now makes me question why it's called a prologue when it's literally just the beginning of the game, unless it's supposed to mean that it's a demo of a prologue? Same annoying enemies, same clunky combat, same pointless dungeons, same brainless puzzles. Biggest difference to the demo so far is that the final boss is actually beatable this time. Do you remember the guy you had to beat and then like 5 meters further had to fight again, but this time he is unkillable? So what happens after you manage to defeat him? The game turns into a town builder. What? So you unlock this base where you are supposed to build the heart of your evil undead empire, and you use resources and minions you collected on the way to build facilities for different purposes, like crafting and storage. Personally, I mainly just built the same altar over and over again, until I reached the arbitrary number of base expansion points the game demanded of me to continue, and then waited until I had enough wood to do the mandatory upgrade for the main shrine. Why the fuck has this game suddenly turned into Clash of Clans? Why do I have to wait for resource gathering to continue the main campaign? Next thing the game wanted me to do was prepare for the invasion? You know what, fuck it, I don't care. This isn't any fun, and I don't understand why this sudden gameplay shift happened or what the intention behind this was. I am confused, annoyed, frustrated. You can craft helmets for 3 iron and then dismantle them for 15 iron, 20 leather and 13 bones. The full version also lands in the monster domain tier. Ah, finally, the perfect palate cleanser after that awful time. Skeleton Scramble Deluxe is a very simple but fun game where you play this charming little fella and are supposed to kill the one on the other side of the field by collecting mana from the trees around you and using it to place down different units to help you with your goal. The best way to describe this game is probably as an extremely simplified RTS, so perfect for someone like me who literally has zero experience with the genre. You have a small selection of units you can place, for example trees for more mana gain, turrets to automatically attack approaching enemies, bone portals that summon skeletons, and pyramids that slow down enemies and drain your mana when you get close to them, and summon a phoenix with it. The way the game creates some depth is by having the ability to place down the same unit multiple times on the same tile to upgrade it. The tree, for example, turns into a magnetic tree that collects mana for you, to then a bee tree that collects mana in a wider area, and then a forest titan that charges at the enemy. The bone portal turns into a skeleton cleric, buffing other skeletons around it, and the pyramid turns into a shaman that deactivates all enemy turrets on the map for a short period of time. So there is definitely a lot of strategy involved in this game, even with it being so simple, both in visuals and mechanics. And with this little selection of units, you fight yourself through a bunch of different difficulties where the enemies try to employ different strategies by having different focuses, with one maybe focusing on turrets and the next in sheer skeleton quantity. This game oozes charm out of every pixel, well. And I'm also pretty sure that every sound effect in the game is just the developer making them with his mouth. It's a short but very fun experience, and I'm definitely gonna play it for a few more rounds against some friends. It deserves to be an A tier. Oh man, this game is such a big spag for me. Little King Story is a different take on the pigment formula, with you running around the world with a little army of goobers following you and throwing them on enemies. But here, instead of being sci-fi with little creatures running around on Earth, everything has a fairy tale picture book aesthetic. You are the chosen one, and therefore made king. King of a glorious and beautiful kingdom that needs more funding to get anything done. So you take your villagers and raid your neighboring kingdoms for loot you can sell at the end of the day. Expanding your kingdom, building houses, and giving your villagers dedicated jobs. And once you have built everything there is to build and ran out of space, you can expand into other territories, forcefully taking their land from its inhabitants and throwing parties with your people being dressed as the indigenous groups we just eradicated. Yes, I also did not expect a game that looks like this to have a plot with such dark topics. After defeating the first bigger boss in the game, the plot even unfolds into us swearing to defeat all the other kings in existence and achieving world domination. But come on, can you be mad at someone who looks as adorable as this? You know you can't. And the entire game is this adorable. Except for the story, everything here is so brutally cutesy and playful. You basically cannot walk around this world without a smile on your face while you're committing war crimes. And what would an insane plot in a children's game be without its equally insane characters? Obviously, there's your advisor that is definitely not evil and manipulating you into fulfilling his power fantasies, but you meet so many insane and fun characters in this journey that it never gets boring. The religion of my kingdom is soup. The pacing in the beginning is also really good. It has a super addicting loop of looting, getting money, expanding the kingdom, and unlocking new jobs that in return allow you to reach new areas. And especially after defeating the first boss, the challenge definitely starts to grow, so you always want to be prepared. Also, don't worry if some of your villagers die, and believe me, they will die. They made it a little bit more personally affecting by giving every villager a name and allowing you to slightly customize their appearance with accessories, but most of them are just gonna wash up on the beach, having their own little Death Stranding, avoiding any kind of loss. And even if they actually die, which can actually happen if you're unlucky, they're just gonna be replaced by a new villager within a day or so you cannot really run out of cannon fodder. But I can't give this game a wholehearted recommendation for a few reasons, and it's mainly for the structural change that happens after you beat the first boss. The game becomes less linear, becoming more open, but sacrificing its tight design. With that, the expansions of the kingdom also slow down drastically. You start building less and you unlock less new land, which in itself isn't that big of a deal, but combined with the rise in difficulty, it kinda started to discourage me from exploring, especially with enemies respawning as quickly as they do. But even this in itself isn't really that big of a deal. The map is relatively small, and I wouldn't mind retrying segments a few times if the game didn't have another massive problem. After dying, you get kicked into the main menu, and the game has a 50-50% chance to corrupt your save file when you try to reload. The modern re-release on Steam is kinda broken. It starts with the game apparently having mouse and keyboard support, but not recognizing them when selected, and the controls being kinda clunky, with a lock-on, for example, sometimes throwing you guys into the completely wrong direction, and of course the save file issue, and with boss encounters like this. Like, seriously, how are you supposed to dodge that mushroom? You can maybe understand my frustration here. And there is actually a fix for that. If you create a new save, play until you can save your progress, go back to the main menu and reload your actual save, it magically works again. But I don't know if you really want to do this for 5 to 10 minutes every time you died or just started the game on another day. I definitely didn't want to do it, so I sadly had to cancel my playthrough of this, even though I really enjoyed what I played. A tier if it worked, sadly C tier in the current state. Ever got bored of your normal life? Modern PCs and gaming is just too much for you, and all you ever dream about is being an office worker with a Windows 98 computer? Well, then I have a game for you. Necromancer Accountant is exactly what the name implies. You're a necromancer settling down in a new area, but in true necromancer fashion, you don't do any actual work for that. You just tell your minions what to do through your little Windows 98 program. In the beginning, you have two important resources, necromancy and corpses, and every minion you want to create has a specific necromancy cost. cost, while all require just one corpse each to be created. But those little skellies are just worker skeletons. They can't really fight, and we obviously need a capable army in our eternal mission of conquest, but the ones with actual weaponry require more than just a body and some necromancy energy. They obviously also need the weapons itself, so you allocate your workers to gather wood, stone and iron to then be able to build dedicated buildings for example swordsmithing, where you then in return allocate even more of your workers to actually start creating swords. It's the eternal struggle of wanting to do one thing, but you need more of another thing for that, but for that you need more of another thing, which in return needs more of the next thing, and so on, which definitely has its addictive charm to it. Problem here is though the locals aren't really happy with a necromancer having settled down near them, racist shits, and start attacking you periodically, so you don't just have to build up your armies to maybe, perhaps, definitely attack and raid close villages. You also have to sacrifice units of yours to keep your health pool high enough, which you have two of, one for physical attacks and one for assassinations, and this is really hard. Every unit type gives a different amount to your two defenses, most of them giving significantly more to your physical one, which led to me getting assassinated countless times. There probably is a better way to keep your defenses in check that I haven't found yet, because the game is really bad at explaining itself. The only kind of tutorial here being this little manual you can click through yourself. That obviously led to me forgetting like 2/3 of it when I actually started playing the game. Also, just a side note, this is how the game looked on my screen. It automatically scales everything to your screen's resolution, but the actual UI doesn't seem to be affected by that. And I also didn't find a way to change that, so I've just been zooming in for you. The game not really explaining itself all that well led to many moments where I started learning things the hard way. The most devastating of those was when I tried to take over a village for the first time. I thought my army was bigger than the village, so that should be an easy win, just for them to completely annihilate my entire army. What you're actually supposed to do is build multiple facilities that allow you to either weaken the villagers by, for example, bribing some to run away or smoking them out, or strengthen yourself, and then go through multiple rounds where you start decimating your own and the villagers' army, depending on the amount and type of units you have. It's actually not even that hard, it's just like I said, really badly explained. There's also a few other systems where I'm genuinely unsure if the game is also bad at explaining them correctly or if they just don't work correctly. For example, you can click on your main tower to open up the human relations window, and apparently you can click on these icons to activate certain effects, like slowing down the growth of villages. But I never was able to notice anything happening, not to mention the pause icon blocking the view every time you enter this menu. This is a thing in general. I like this game and what it does. It's a fine idle game where you create things and then start automating it and just continue growing until you physically cannot anymore. It just feels so clunky. And a game that's literally just menus really should not feel that way. Maybe it was intentional to stay true to the spirit this game seemingly tries to capture, but I don't really know. Well, I'm just going to go through even more runs until I manage to figure out all of those things as well. Or how I managed to get over minus 500 zombies. What does that even mean? Are they alive now again? Do we have normal humans in my army? The game goes on beat here. So, when do you think I have talked about enough necromancy games to become one myself?
Wait, you thought you can become one by talking about necromancy games?
Yeah, is that not how it works? How did you become one?
I just learned the spells. Want me to show them to you?
You have to ask? Let's go, I wanna become a real necromancer! Oh, yes, I did it! And it only took me over 5 months to finally pull it off. That's a short time, is it?
Yeah, totally.
Phew! I was starting to get kinda scared, but I'm not cut out for this. So what do we do next?
Maybe more necromancer games?
More necromancy games, baby! The first game I want to show off today is Tainted, Grail, Fall of Avalon. It just needs to validate the game files every time you launch the game, which can take up to multiple minutes. Well, while we wait, I can show you this absolutely insane soundtrack the game has, like the song that is running right now on the title screen. Oh. Well, I guess that has been that. The game has a soundtrack so good it's actually copyrighted. Did it finish finally? Man, what a beautiful game. Not specifically graphically, but definitely art style and design-wise. This game is oozing with style. From the way the armor is designed to the enemies and especially the world. Just look at the giant swords in the mountain or the statue that is holding up the entire cliff. Its aesthetic is so perfect. It basically was the sole reason I was interested in this game from the beginning. Not even having looked at how the gameplay is actually like or anything else, to be honest, which just makes me even more pissed that I can't show you the soundtrack because it works so perfectly together with the look of the game that it's just fully sucking me into this world while playing. The game's story is based on the Arthurian legend, so we have things like King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table, and Excalibur, but the game is taking it all into its very own and dark direction, mixing it with a very painterly dark fantasy aesthetic and also having some very obvious inspirations, like this room that could have been designed by H.R. Geiger himself. What I found so interesting about the music now was that it goes into a completely different direction. The soundtrack revolves around Norse mythology, the main theme literally being titled Ymir, and singing about the different realms like Nifl and Muspelheim. The instruments used also follow the style, sounding more like chants and folk songs played by Vikings, although still with a modern touch thanks to some more modern techniques in the background. And I love it. I now have a perfect playlist once my next D&D session happens. I'm also gonna link the playlist with all the songs on YouTube because I really want you to listen to the soundtrack if I'm not allowed to show it here of myself. But I think it's time to actually look at the gameplay. I was so distracted by the art and music, I genuinely have no idea how the gameplay is even. Oh my god! Hey, welcome. What you see here in the background is me from like 5 seconds ago, realizing that this is a Bethesda-style first-person RPG. And if you've been following this series for a while, you know my opinion on those. I am, to this day, still getting comments calling me a fake gamer over it. How dare I not like a game as much as you do, I know. But Oblivion got a remaster recently, and it's now by far the best looking game Bethesda has ever made, and they reworked a bunch of systems to make the game less clunky and annoying, and make the leveling actually work, and yeah, it's still just as boring to play for me. With the same uninteresting combat, the same bugs, the same unintuitive menus, and the same issues I have with literally every Bethesda game. By far the thing I liked the most was the quests though. Doing those was always the most fun for me in this game. Thanks to the actually really good writing and the game now having more than just 2 voice actors, especially moments like the Dark Brotherhood quest were a lot of fun. With its optional objectives in how you are supposed to fulfill the quests for extra rewards was genuinely amazing. Even though the way you unlock this quest line is kinda weird. What? Who are you and what are you doing in my bed?
I know what you did.
But the quests can be as fun as they want. If I'm not enjoying the main gameplay, I can't really enjoy the game overall.
This is a holdup. Hand it over or die. Good choice. Take it. It's worthless to me anyway.
Especially with this awful necromancy. You can have one summon max, and then they are also timed. Not to mention them being literally brain dead and barely being any help in a fight. And leveling your summoning ability is also just annoying, because the game levels your attributes the more you use them. Which in itself is a great system and works very intuitively, but for summoning mainly just means that you run around like this. A lot. And now actually speaking while editing this video, I'm currently playing through Cyberpunk again, and this game actually has a pretty similar system now with like the 2.0 version where you have specific stats that increase by doing things more often, but instead of literally every single thing having its own stat, it's like subcategories. So you have like multiple categories that just include multiple things, which makes it a lot more manageable to actually level up the things you want to level up instead of just like spamming the same spell over and over and over again until it actually levels up. The remaster sadly is going to continue dwelling in the same tier as the original. You can try and revoke my capital G gamer card as much as you want. It's not going to make me like these games anymore. Wasn't I doing something before? Oh yeah, right. Oh god, why? Why is it a Bethesda-style RPG? Why would you? Okay, let's try to calm down. Maybe we changed and improved it a bunch, similar to how Avowed managed to make me really enjoy this kind of game. So how is the basic gameplay like? You have your standard things like stats you can increase with points you gain on level ups, stats you can increase by doing the corresponding thing, and a truckload of skill trees. But how is the combat? Oh no. It's 1-to-1 the same as in Oblivion or Skyrim. Floaty punches into enemies that feel bad, and in third person also look bad, but okay, I'm gonna cut them some slack here, because I deliberately warn you about third person not being the best, as the game was entirely designed around first person. So it's not really the biggest issue, but some of these animations... like, come on. Overall, I don't really mind the melee combat being relatively boring for me. I didn't intend for going melee anyway, because we obviously want to go the Necromancer and Mage route, which luckily doesn't really take all that long to reach. You don't unlock spells through the skill trees. Those are almost entirely for passive effects. Spells get treated like weapons, meaning you also have to find or buy them. But good for us, one of the first quests you get after the opening is to take care of some Necromancer that is doing weird necromancy shenanigans at the local graveyard. And as soon as he is dealt with, we have our very own Necromancer robe, staff, and skeleton summons. And I'm just gonna hold your hand while saying this. The necromancy isn't the best. I know. The magic system in general isn't really as good as it could be. Spells have 2 activations each, either on clicking the corresponding key or holding it down for a bit. For example, with this little blood bullet spell that I have here, this means clicking shoots little blood shots at the enemy while keeping the button pressed turns it into a damage over time sucking spell that slowly heals me as well. For the summon spells, that means keeping the button pressed works as the actual summon of the creature, while clicking works as a command key to tell the little dudes which target they should focus on. And that's already where the problems start. As I already mentioned, the game treats spells like they are normal weapons, but this also means there is no real magic menu and you have to equip them in either your left or right hand, which severely limits your magic capabilities, especially because there is no quick select like in the Elder Scrolls games. The game instead has 4 loadouts that you can set to whatever you want, but it's always just the left and right hand, meaning if you want to switch your spell, you also have to switch your melee weapon you were holding in your other hand, unless you want to put the same one in all your loadouts. Again, severely limiting what you should be capable of. Then there are staffs, which you probably want to use as a mage because they give you some nice buffs for your spells, but you use them like a normal melee weapon, bonking people on the head instead of something like channeling the spell through them, which in return obviously means that you can only hold a single spell in the loadout that you want to have a buff. Which brings us back to the problem with the summons, because they are really dumb. Like, they barely do anything without being commanded first. Dumb. Meaning, if you don't want to use your summon spell in the same loadout as the weapon you are currently using, but instead want to use an offensive spell to deal damage yourself, you constantly have to switch between your loadouts through this weapon wheel, which feels more clunky than it should. The already floaty combat just feels even worse for me due to the lacking fluidity that is created by this. I hate to do this, but I have to bring up Avowed again, because that game deals with the magic, and honestly with the entire combat, in a way more enjoyable way. With you having a key bar that you can place a bunch of spells and abilities on, and this game only has 2 loadouts. But it feels way more open and versatile thanks to this simple addition, because you can free up your actual loadout slots for the weapons and gear you wanna use, while you can use the key bar for your spells. And when we're already talking about it, Avowed did the unthinkable and made first-person Bethesda-style WRPGs fun for me by, and now get this, making the melee combat actually snappy and responsive. I know. Insane. With attacks actually feeling like they are connecting and being fun. Insane. And I also love the magic system, with you being able to unlock every spell in the game permanently through the skill tree, but you have to find a magic book with the spell in it first. And if you have a book equipped, you basically get a second hotkey bar you swap to by holding down the right click. But that's enough glazing of that game for now. It sadly doesn't have actual necromancy in it that the player can actually control, so it's sadly irrelevant for this video. Tainted Grail also doesn't feel balanced at all. There's a lot of different things you can level up simultaneously in your skill tree, like magic damage, your summon capabilities, and many other things, but especially in the early levels you can feel really underpowered if you want to go for more than just one thing at a time. For me, for example, my points were split between the summon, staff, magic and melee skill trees, probably slightly handicapping myself compared to if I just have focused on solely magic from the beginning. Personally, I think the game should account for that possibility though and allow for everything to be a bit more lenient. At least in the beginning. But the devs seem to disagree with me on that, because the story mandatory fights force you into these tiny arenas, one-shot your minions, attack you with the 1 or 2 attacks they have while obviously dealing insane damage and also obviously being insanely tanky, and they also have healing potions sometimes. Of course they do. That was actually the breaking point for me, when you have to fight a Knight of the Round Table at the end of Act 1 and you just get constantly stuck on the environment while running away from him, and after I finally beat him, after many tries of annoyances, it obviously still isn't over because all the guards outside the cave we fought in, behind like 3 walls, just felt it in their left testicle that something happened and jumped me. Obviously all also being insanely strong. I heard from others that the combat felt way better for them when they tried for more standard, melee-focused builds, because minions genuinely feel useless most of the time, and having a, for example, sword and shield build simplifies everything quite a bit, because you don't really have to worry about loadouts if you are just going to run around with a single weapon type instead of multiple spells. Same with the skill trees, obviously. I apparently was also massively under-leveled at this point, with someone in my chat telling me while I was fighting that stupid knight at level 18 that they were around level 30 here, because I apparently missed a huge amount of optional caves and dungeons you can explore, which did surprise me because I thought I have been relatively thorough with the map, but that would at least have explained why I felt this weak here. But then again, all the fights before this one don't even come close to this difficulty spike, and I was able to handle all of them pretty easily, and even the optional bounty bosses weren't all that much of an issue. And it would be genuinely awful difficulty balancing to demand of a player to almost do everything in an area before you're strong enough to progress. At that point, they could just give you a level recommendation on the quest to spare you the time you just bash your head into the wall. I actually put the game on easy after this point. For one, because I don't have to prove anything to you. I have beaten hard game before. It's not because this one is too hard. And secondly, because I wanted to continue the game without too much frustration. Because I genuinely love everything else way too much. I already talked about how beautiful the art and the music is in this game, and believe me, it gets even better after Act 1 and onward. But I also really enjoyed the quests and story in this game. The main story itself is super interesting, with you carrying a piece of Arthur's soul in you, wanting to collect all the rest in an attempt to give him his power and also memories back. But with him also more and more realizing all the atrocities he committed. Not to mention you having a lot of choices that affect the outcome of certain scenarios. In the main story, but as well as in the side quests. I, for example, actually had the option to offer the Knight of the Round Table my services, but as I genuinely didn't like him, I never picked that option because I just wanted to see him dead. So maybe you actually might decline your services. But remember when I talked about dealing with the Necromancer? There are actually a lot of options you have here, with the one that I picked revolving around convincing him that the only way to truly understand his craft is by turning himself into an undead. Basically just killing himself. So even if you are like me and don't enjoy the Elder Scrolls style combat or are disappointed by the lackluster necromancy, maybe still give it a shot for the great story, quest and exploration. Or just download a mod to unlock the console to truly turn this game into a Bethesda one. FYI, this game doesn't have a level cap, so nothing is holding you back from just fiddling around with it and giving yourself like 2000 levels. I increased my stats to a ridiculous degree, and I've maxed out every skill tree in the game while still having over 1,500 skill points left. Enemies are now being flung away and one-shot by me when they dare to touch me. Who needs builds? I have all the builds! This one can go right next to Oblivion. Okay, before I go into more detail about the next game we are going to talk about, I just want to say that I already knew what it was about, because I always heard about the game, but just never played it before. But I didn't expect it to flash me with this picture right in the beginning of it. This is really speaking to my German heritage here.
Wer hat hier das geheiligte Reich Deutschland erwähnt?
And apparently also Necro-Chans. Are you even German?
Oh, I don't know.
Would you want me to be German?
Stubbs the Zombie in Rebel Without a Pulse is a very specific type of game that seemed to be really popular in 2005 for some reason, with it releasing right next to Destroy All Humans, both following a similar concept of causing as much havoc as possible and taking as many humans with you as possible. But instead of playing as an alien, using all kinds of sci-fi tech to get rid of people, we play as the undead Stubbs, who just randomly arose one day in the middle of a park, with nobody even really minding our green rotting skin or our hanging out guts. Really tolerant. Wouldn't have expected that from people who in a setting inspired by 50s futurism, at least in the beginning. Before the hillbillies come, they are never going to be tolerant against non-white-skinned people. The gameplay itself is structured very simple. You limp around the stage, attacking and fighting every human that you find, turning them into a part of your small zombie horde, with every level having a dedicated beginning and end with a clear goal that you have to achieve. Like running after a woman you find attractive, blowing up a building, or contaminating the water reservoir of a city by pissing in it. To then blow up the dam and flood everything with zombie piss. Or how about winning a dance battle against the US Army? Yeah, it really has this specific kind of early 2000s shitpost humor. Good for it then, but I adore that. What you do in the stages itself is actually kinda unimportant. They are pretty open-ended and don't restrict you in any way. All that matters is that you reach the end goal. And the game really doesn't need to do more than just that. Biting and killing people in all different ways available is always hilarious and never gets dull, which gets supported by your continuously growing army in each stage that just helps you doing exactly that. To keep it fresh, the game also constantly adds new ways for you to fight, like using your head as an explosive bowling ball or your hand to mind control people. Let's not forget about the toxic fart or the stinky gut grenades as well. Those are very vital. Where the game kinda loses me is when they start throwing only enemies at you that are actually competent or only have ranged weapons, because then the game can go from simple and fun to simply annoying really quick. The game just doesn't feel built for a lot of enemies with hitscan weapons, so you, with your mainly melee arsenal, are kinda fucked in some situations, especially the mall entrance that comes relatively early in the game. Was pure hell because of this. You just die so quickly and they also instantly kill any minion you get to control. It makes it really frustrating in some situations to just continue. This luckily only goes for a few levels. They strike a better balance later with that, also giving you way more options within the levels and even more things to actually interact with. Another issue I had was the boss fights, because the game also has more traditional ones next to the dance battle. They aren't really hard, but they try to act like they are more complex than the game actually is, resulting in them just feeling more annoying than fun. They are sluggish back and forths between you attacking them and them dealing ridiculously high amounts of damage, with them not even telegraphing how much damage they are actually taking or if you're even doing something correct. Just look at this sad excuse of a fight. But hey, at least the music's great. The game also kinda loses its steam around the halfway mark. It's still fun. Like I said, the zombifying of people doesn't get boring, but when I live streamed it, my chat audibly started to get fatigued by the game, which hasn't really happened with any other game I've played before. I still had my fun with it on stream though, so it's a B from me. Why? Oh, why did I? Oh, fuck! I am a very forgetful person. So I might have forgotten to actually play all that much on the server I set up for V-Rising a year ago. But the year's over, the subscription ran out, and the server is gone! So I think it's time to finally talk about the game. Yeah. Like I already said, I didn't really play all that much on the server, but please don't take it as a fault of the game itself. Right from the get-go, I can say this game is one of the most unique and fun survival games I have played in a long time. The issue lied entirely with me. I'm kinda burnt out of survival games in general. There have been so many coming out over the last few years that I obviously all had to play day one, which just led to me not even being able to play them for any longer than 10 minutes at a time. But I pulled myself together and forced myself to play one more survival game for now, to be able to now tell you about it. Look at all the things I'm doing for you. Yeah. Almost deserves a subscribe and a like and a subscription on Patreon. Or a membership. A lot of people from our Discord server actually played on the world, leaving around their own structures, but the most active by far was Little Killing here. From what I saw, the dude basically played the game almost daily, which actually is somewhat required in active play, but more on that later. Little Killing also basically beat the game twice over. Once when the server first launched, and then again after the mandatory server reset that happened when the 1.1 released. He literally did everything and built everything possible, even continuing to actively play after there was technically nothing left to do for him, logging in from time to time just to maintain the bases. But why am I mentioning that? Well, because thanks to him, I got the best gear in the game like a minute after creating my character, even with the magic transmogs to make myself look like Necro-Chan.
Ah yes, I love my blood. Give me your neck. Ha ha ha.
And that's how fast it can go, if you have YouTuber privileges. Thanks to this fully upgraded castle, I was able to instantly unlock all crafting recipes and passives. But there was only one thing I couldn't instantly unlock: the necromancy abilities. I was given some necromancy-themed weapons that had passive abilities that would summon a few skellies here and there, but the actual active abilities are hidden behind the different magic trees in the game, which you, even at level 91, don't unlock just like that. You have to defeat the respective overworld bosses to unlock them. The game has something I really appreciate in an open-world survival game like this: guidance in the form of a quest system, to continuously unlock new abilities and building structures. The game basically nudges you in the right direction by telling you certain milestones and things you should complete to progress, and when you did enough of them and increase your level far enough, it's time to hunt for the blood, which are strong humans or creatures that, after defeat, allow you to unlock new abilities, like transformations, new crafting recipes, or active spells, and killing the obligatory necromancy-themed bosses allows you to unlock the necromancy abilities. Don't expect too much though. All spell families follow similar archetypes. All of them have a dodge ability, shield ability, a projectile ability for example, with the differences basically just being aesthetic and slightly different effects. Which doesn't mean there aren't really cool ones, like the awesome Reaper of obligatory ultimate that summons a big army of undead, but my favorite ability by far was one you only get really late. A specific one you can't get through the magic trees, the Soul Shard of Solaris, which gives you access to the Fallen Angel summon as your ultimate. The Soul Shards are a really cool concept in this game. They are drops of the strongest bosses in the game, the so-called Shard Bearers, and each one has a unique ultimate ability of one of the different magic schools. But here comes the kicker: only one exists each over the entire server. And they are marked on the map, meaning our players see who has them, and they can come and hunt for them, leading into the PvP aspect of the game. Other players can't only just attack you, they can also raid your base and steal your loot. Your character also doesn't unload once you log off, and instead just starts to sleep on the ground where you left. So it's important to have high enough defenses against other players, like vampiric servants you can create by turning humans that attack unwanted guests for you, only tolerating players that are in your clan. It's an interesting back and forth, encouraging player interaction and combat, but this sadly also includes an aspect that I really don't like in this game. The map is somewhat small, at least compared to other survivor games, and castles can only be built at specific locations on the map, meaning potential castle space is kinda limited, so they needed to find a way to ensure that there's always space for new ones on public servers, and that there isn't a whole bunch of abandoned ones across the map taking away the space, so they decided that your castles have an upkeep cost. And if it runs out, it starts to decay, turning it into a ruin. In itself an interesting idea for active players to take care of your castle, and it's everything but hard to fill it up so much that it lasts for days. But now imagine you go on vacation for over a week, or you have some internet provider issues or anything else, and when you return your castle is gone. It's what kept me away from the game for most of the time, because I tend to sometimes have longer gaps between play sessions, and I wouldn't want to deal with that the entire time. But I luckily didn't have this issue this time, obviously with the great help of Little Killing. The game still is probably one of my favorite twists in the survival game genre itself, with its awesome boss fights and just gorgeous castles you can construct. So I'm comfortably putting it into B tier. Also, maybe another short mention would be Elden Ring Nightreign. And by short, I mean really short, because there isn't really that much to talk about, because this game just is mostly Elden Ring, but as a roguelike. And I don't even mean that as a bad thing. I wanted to play more third-person action game roguelites for a while now, so this game is actually perfect for what I wanted. With a genre shift, the game also isn't open world anymore. You select the boss you want to face at your hub, wait for a group to form or join in with your friends, and start exploring the map. It's a relatively small map that you can get across extremely quickly, especially thanks to the massively increased running speed they gave you due to the removal of Torrent. But you can't explore the map for all that long, because the game uses the ever-closing storm circle from Fortnite. You heard correctly. Fortnite. And you definitely don't want to stay outside of that one for too long. It can kill you real quick. Especially when you're inside a cave and you can't find the goddamn exit! And when the circle turns small enough, a bigger wave of enemies spawns, which after they're defeated spawns a boss for the night, which mostly consists of reused bosses from Elden Ring, but they also bring back some older ones from older Dark Souls games, which are now arguably way easier than before, thanks to all the things you can do in this game compared to what you weren't able to do prior. But it's still cool to see them again. After you defeat the boss, the circle widens and you repeat the process, killing more bosses, gathering loot, leveling up, defeating the boss of the second night, and trying your best at the actual boss you selected at the beginning. And all of those final bosses are new, and they are genuinely insane visual spectacles and all also insanely hard, especially considering that the build you face them with is obviously somewhat luck-based. Not to mention you also having to rely on your teammates not sucking and at least somewhat contributing, which can be tricky with randoms. The bosses can feel extremely damage spongy if not all of your team are equally contributing to the fight. But if everyone is doing their part, the bosses can drop like flies. The only thing I don't really like about the game, at least for now, is that there is only one map at this time, with it only slightly changing when random events happen. And yeah, location placements and enemies are random, but the overall layout isn't. So it sadly can get repetitive way quicker than I'd want to. But enough about that, where is the Necromancy? Unlike normal Souls games, you have predetermined classes in this one, which you cannot manually change the stats of. Every level is predetermined, and same goes for the strengths and weaknesses. But in exchange, every class got 3 unique abilities. A passive one, an active one, and an ultimate ability. And one of the classes is Revenant, which you have to unlock first by defeating the first Night Lord. Oh, that could be a problem. Talking to the Cloaked Lady and giving her the item we got for defeating the first boss to unlock the Duchess, buying the besmirched frame that can now be purchased at the Jar Bazaar, and then talking to this ghostly figure that now stands in the hub area. And all you have to do now is defeat her with all her summons out at once. Just go in there with Iron Eye and you basically win by default. Ha! Miyazaki might not have been the director of this one, but his DNA lives on in her design. It's so beautiful. Mechanics-wise, this is my favorite character in the game. I know, shocker. Her active ability allows her to get out one of her 3 summons, Helen, Frederick, and Sebastian. Yes, those are their real names, and they're great. Helen is a small unit that attacks enemies quickly. Frederick is a truly massive lad and is great at tanking and dealing with bigger groups. And Sebastian is by far the strongest, dealing insane damage, but can't move by himself. All 3 are permanent summons and only have a relatively short recharge time after being killed, so you constantly can get out one of your friends to help you in battle. Her passive gives her a small chance to resummon any downed normal enemy to return as a ghost and fight for you for a short time, and her ultimate turns you and your allies immortal for a short time, which doesn't mean you can't take damage anymore, it just means you won't die. And it also empowers your main summons, giving them access to their own ultimates. It's a genuinely great class and a lot of fun to play with. The entire class gimmick in general is super fun, and it kinda makes me wish for FromSoft to make a full Souls game where you have more restricted classes that in exchange allow for more varied gameplay styles like this game offers. And it also is just very funny to finally have some more varied body types in a FromSoft game and have this small puny girl run around next to this absolutely massive and buff dude. Definitely want more of that as well. But I said that it's my favorite class mechanics-wise for a reason. Overall, I'd say I enjoyed playing the most as either Iron Eye or the Raider, and there is a reason for that. The staying back and letting your minions take over approach doesn't really work all that great, with a constant stress of a timer and you having to be on the move. Revenant summons oftentimes just feel too slow to get used to their true potential, and from what my different teammates told me, the summons are also more annoying and distracting for them than actually helping. helpful in a fight. You're able to somewhat make her more useful with the augments you find in your runs that you then can equip before starting a new one, by for example allowing her ultimate to also heal nearby teammates, but it sadly doesn't do enough for now, at least in my and my friends' opinions. So I'd maybe recommend leaving the class more for solo runs than the actual multiplayer, which just even more makes me wish for a similar gameplay style to return in a full game. Her storyline you can play through by doing her relatively easy missions, at least compared to some of the others, is also depressing as hell, so I can really recommend that part too. I still managed to talk about the game for quite some time. Well, I wouldn't be Rising Blur if I wouldn't be able to yap about everything for way too much. This is, by the way, my difficulty ranking for all the Night Lords, not including the stronger variants of them, where they start off in their second phase and have a new third one. Didn't manage to beat any of them so far, and the game itself is gonna go into B. Necromancer's Tale is a game we already talked about quite some time ago at this point, back then only having been able to talk about the demo, where the devs themselves asked me if I'd be interested to try it out. And so much time has passed, in fact, that the devs contacted me again with the great news that the game finally fully released. And I want to be fully transparent about the fact that I was contacted by the devs here. It wouldn't feel right to not tell you about this, like I'm not actually being genuine about my opinions on the game. But you can stay relaxed, I didn't sign anything, and they also didn't ask me to only talk about things I actually liked. I'm fully allowed to rip into this game if I so choose to, as they just asked me if I'd want to talk about it. And if I ever turn into that kind of sellout that would sell their opinions for money, just tag me behind the back end. I actually don't really know what I could still add to my review from last time. The full release is a straight continuation of a demo. What I can say about the game's structure itself is that after thinking about it for a little bit longer, it reminded me less of classical CRPGs like Baldur's Gate, where the main gameplay loop revolves around continuously exploring new areas and fighting. But way more, it reminded me of classic point-and-click adventure games. There still is dungeon crawling and turn-based battles here, but most of your time, and especially in the beginning, is spent by talking in this one relatively manageable sized town to people and solving the issues by finding the correct item they need, or by collecting all the ingredients for the rituals inside the Tome of your father, but more on that later. But instead of always only having a single solution for each hurdle, the Necromancer's Tale offers a way more open approach. Almost every roadblock has multiple solutions, allowing for your creativity to run wild and making it easier, but sometimes even harder for yourself. I really appreciate this approach at progression. My German blood is screaming in excitement over new things to scratch the point-and-click itch. Although I must admit that I am also way too stupid for these games sometimes, and am often struggling to progress for a hot minute, but luckily never for too long, and I always manage to find solutions for my tasks somehow. Another thing that I just entirely adored in the full release is how lived in and real this town feels. There's a day and night cycle that progresses on command, with everyone having a routine. You can literally just go in any of the taverns in the town and talk to random people, with most having little stories to tell you, and maybe even having small quests for you, where they make fun of you for just doing as I said, like the little game protag that you are. But you should watch out for what you are asking some people, because getting too curious can make them suspicious of you. There never seems to be a strict time limit on anything, so just walking around and talking to random strangers on the street can be a really fun experience. The highlight though is definitely the Tome of your father, filled with strange languages you don't understand and crude drawings describing an assortment of different spells and rituals. Over the progress of the playthrough, you continuously unlock the ability to translate and understand more and more of what the book says, allowing you to use its power in your different tasks, like making a potion to help your mother sleep, where you actually have to track down and collect all the ingredients yourself and then follow the instruction of how to prepare them. But beware, because fucking up the preparation might have severe consequences. Ha! What don't we all do for a little bit of undead domination? The combat is also the exact same as in the demo, meaning I still suck at it. Actually being able to equip your undeads now is definitely making it a lot more manageable for me. And there's also an auto-resolve mode now that shows you the probability of you winning the fight and then just doing it for you. Just know that the computer might think a fight would be unbeatable while it still was relatively manageable to do manually, so it doesn't inherently make it easier. I really am enjoying every minute in this game, and I can't be anything else but amazed by what this small team at Psychic Software managed with this amazing title. Fully deserves the A tier. And I just want to mention, this is definitely not a brag or anything, but I also influenced the development of this game. And by influenced, I mean I did something so stupid that the devs found it so funny, they actually implemented it in the game. Remember when I talked about the demo last time and how I was able to flirt with some guard lady? Well, it turns out that was a big misunderstanding and she never actually wanted to go out with me. But the devs found my excitement in the livestream and in the video so funny that they actually added it to the game, making her way more flirtatious towards you than before. So to all the Necro Rizzlers out there, yeah boy, did you a solid. You can thank me later or just become a member or patron. And now that this is over, I'm just gonna...
Are you cheating
What?
on me?
Cheating? Again? This is
How
a video
dare
game.
You? Yes,
Since when are we
again.
even a thing?
Don't care, she's
Why
not
do you
me.
care about this?
This is
Let me
to
goon
me.
in peace!
Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening again. Oh my God, what is happening? Craig,
Craig?
you made me cry.
Wait,
Craig,
I don't even wear sugar.